Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Thank you. All right. So good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, actually. I guess it's good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Rich Foreman, and I am amongst many things, I am the chapter director of Startup Grind Sacramento. And a little bit about Startup Grind Sacramento. We represent 2 million entrepreneurs in over 600 cities and 125 countries. We had a chapter in Iran before the police ran us out, but we've had chapters in Iran, Tel Aviv, the Gaza Strip. In fact, one of my favorite pictures is of the chapter directors together from the Tel Aviv, the Gaza Strip, and Iran. So we're all entrepreneurs. We are a community of entrepreneurs helping each other out. So I'm going to take a step back. So if for those of us that are entrepreneurs here, it's a very lonely journey. I can tell you, I've been a serial entrepreneur for over a decade, and there's been a lot of times where I actually thought, maybe I need to, get my resume out there and look for a job because this isn't working. But as a community, we help each other out. We have different skill sets. I've been in a situation where, I've sat down and I could talk to, if a person's interested in making an app, I could help them out. And I've had other people help me out. They'll look at my website and they'll go like, Rich, you don't even have Sacramento mentioned on your website. So as a community, we help each other out. And so our mission is to basically give startups everywhere the education, opportunity, and access to build, grow, and scale their company. And these are our values. And when I first saw them, I actually thought they were kind of hokey. It's like we believe in making friends, not contacts, believe in giving, not taking, and helping others before helping yourselves. And I really thought that was like, oh, yeah, I kind of rolled my eyes. But now that I've been doing this for I think this is 8 years that I've been a Startup Grind chapter, I believe it's fundamentally what it makes us different, that, we're a community, we help each other out. Normally, Laura Good talks about the Startup Sac update, and I actually didn't talk to her about this yet. So what I'm going to really do right now is I'm going to talk about what we're doing here in Folsom. So we are, many of us here are working on something we're calling Startup Folsom. If you look in the Sacramento region, you see that the cities of Elk Grove, Sacramento, Roseville, Rockland, even El Dorado County is investing money and resources to help build their community. And that hasn't actually happened here. So mostly through members of the Granite City Coworking, we've started something. So we do have a website at startupfolsom.org. We have a number. We actually are planning to have at least 4 events a month. One's going to be called Founders Anonymous. It was a tongue-in-cheek thing, but basically it's a founders support group. So you can go there. If you have a business problem, the community can actually help you out or give you some advice. And conversely, if you're an experienced entrepreneur, you can help others out. We have Beer and Geeks, which is going to be on the 5th, and that is that's a networking event. And then we're going to have a fireside chat with the founders of Clutch. Basically, they went from 0 to 200 employees. It's just an amazing story they've had. And then we're going to have a workshop. I think the workshop we have is going to be later in January, and it's on building an online course. So as a community, we are here in Folsom, we're working on building that up right now. And I'm just going to give a second here. Normally what we do is anybody have an elevator pitch they want to talk about their company? Sadell, Josh? Nothing? Okay. Normally, I guess everyone's shy. But usually we give an opportunity for people to give an elevator pitch about their company. So with that, I'm just going to go into housekeeping. Everyone's been really good. Please keep yourself muted. And if you have a question, just type it out in the chat, and then I will try to ask Rex at a good time about the question, or you could basically wait to the Q&A, and then it's kind of a free fall. And the question that this is. We always get this is being recorded, and it will be posted on our site afterwards. So with that, let me introduce you to Rex. Rex is basically he looks like he's 12. You look like you're 12 in this picture, Rex. I wish I had that problem. Rex is a founder of No Fluff Selling, and he actually is the author of Outbound Sales, No Fluff. Can you see that? He has his own agents. He's an experienced sales professional, and now he has his own agencies. And I actually sit near him at the co-working space, so I could hear him mentoring lots of other startups during the time. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and bring it over to Rex. Rex, you want to basically, I'm going to stop sharing, and you can share your screen.
Yeah, cool.
And I'm going to kill our video.
Okay. Slideshow here, guys. And please chat us online if you're not able to hear me. I want to make sure that you guys can hear me okay. This is our first time doing a hybrid event, and I'll mostly be talking to you but I will assume that you guys will chat us if you need something. Cool. So as mentioned, I'm Rex Biberston. I'm here not because I'm paid to, but because I love talking about sales. I just love this stuff. I find
You're getting pizza.
I'm getting paid in pizza and Coke Zero, so it's fair. Do please connect with me afterward on LinkedIn. It's where I spend most of my time online. I don't do any other social media platforms, but I do love LinkedIn. So you can go to connectwithrex.com. It'll take you right to my profile. A little life hack there. I promise to be quick on this one. This is my own housekeeping. Yes, ask questions in chat or raise your hand. Anyone who stays till the end can workshop. So I'll have a presentation, but then afterward we'll have plenty of time to chat about what you're currently building or questions you run into or problems you guys run into from a sales perspective. Being recorded.
Hey, Rich, turn on your video.
Yeah,
that way people can see you.
Cool. I will turn on my video here shortly as soon as I learn how to use.
Go. I think if you go to the Rex and then you Rex me and then.
Guys, I promise I'm better at this with Zoom. Hang on.
Yeah, this is WebEx.
Let me turn on
there you
video.
Go. Okay, then I can go back to sharing.
Here it is. Good to go? All right.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, so for those of you who are online, you can now see me and hear me, hopefully. Cool. All right. This is a question for the group. How do you know when a sale has started? How do you know when it's begun? What's the trigger? When does the sale start?
When I open my mouth.
When you open your mouth, okay, as a sales professional, maybe you open your mouth and a sale starts because people are listening. Any thoughts?
You show interest in your service?
Show interest? Yeah.
There's a need.
There's a need. Interesting. Okay, I like that one. Any thoughts?
And whenever they engage with the brand the first time.
Engage. I like that. Cool. I'll throw a couple ideas out there. When someone finds something that they like, want, or need, right? That could be where a sale starts. When pain from a problem exceeds the comfort of the status quo. So this goes back to it's really easy to do nothing. How do we make it more compelling than doing nothing? And that's pretty stinking hard. So there are different definitions, right? We could all think about it. I'm going to propose a formula today for how we create a sales interaction. How do we create a successful one? And it's going to start with your target, okay? Now, it's not just from a sales perspective. We'll talk about how sales and marketing both handle this because it's the same formula and it scales with you infinitely. It can scale with you through, founder-led sales all the way through. I've got 100 salespeople across the world. How do we make sure that we're doing the right things? So it starts with your target. If you're selling to consumers, any of you guys sell to consumers or all business? Consumer, business? Yeah? Mixed bag? Okay. If you're selling to consumers, just talking to the right person. If you're selling to businesses, it's the right person at the right company. Okay, so there's two factors there. If we're talking about, now the next component to this is target plus message. Okay, and there's two parts of the message, which is one, what you're asking them to do, right? So the call to action or the ask, and it's got to be relevant. And what's the wrapper around this that resonates? This is how we start the sales interaction. Something, okay, I'm the right person as a buyer. There's a message that resonated with me and it's asking me to do something I'm willing to do. And then let's talk about channel. What channel are we using or where are we being reached as buyers? People tend to focus a lot on this. You'll see endless conversations and disputations on LinkedIn and Twitter about if cold calling's dead or if even display ads is a big thing recently. Marketers, display ads are dead. And of course, we all know who have any experience of this thing that multi-channel is the only way. You can't just pick one thing. It doesn't work forever. It doesn't work for everyone. So multi-channel is the way. And then the final component here is timing. How many of you guys have heard of Chet Holmes? You ever heard of him? He's the late, great author of a few books, but the Ultimate Sales Machine is his most popular book. And he did some great research that he ultimately published this pyramid. Now this is a, I don't know, emailmonks.com. I don't know who they are. I stole this graphic from them. But he shared that of all the people in all the markets in the world, of all the buyers, 3% are buying now. Just based on, of all the people you can reach with your ads, with your outbound sales, with your marketing, whatever you're doing, 3% are buying right this minute. 6 to 7% are open to it, which means 10% of people are in market today. So ultimately, the timing is how do we look for signals, things that are changing, events that have occurred or things they're preparing for that are going to give us the best opportunity to engage. And then how do we stay pleasantly top of mind to convert the 90%, right? That's the formula. What questions does that bring up for you guys, or what ideas does that raise for you? Does it resonate with you? Can you see how that works?
Yeah, sure. What signals, give an example of a signal, I suppose.
Yeah, so if I'm selling, let's say marketing services to major corporations, they just hired a new CMO. That's a pretty big signal. The good timing to reach out and say, hey, as you're coming on, you're evaluating your current vendors, would you consider throwing our hat in the ring? Like, could we throw our hat in the ring for evaluation? Perfect timing, right? We'll talk about a couple of examples from both a marketing perspective and a sales perspective here in a second. But there are lots of different signals. Could be a round of fundraising. So if I sell to startups, for example, which I do, if I notice you just raised some funds and you've announced it, now it's probably a couple months after you actually raised those funds, but you finally announced it, you're going to get hit with a bunch of salespeople saying, hey, saw you raise funds. I imagine your priorities are this. If you release a 10K report, you're a publicly traded company, and it says, here's our new priorities, or here's how this initiative turned out. It turned out poorly and we need to improve it, and that's what we're going to report on in our next 10K. You now know that that's a high priority for that business. So there are all kinds of different signals. Does that fit what you're looking for? Yeah.
So is your second website Crunchbase?
No.
For LinkedIn?
Yeah, Crunchbase is a really good resource for looking for that. It depends on what kinds of companies you sell to. Or if you sell to consumers, this could be signals like holidays are coming up. Okay, it's a recurring signal. It's going to happen every single year, but that's seasonality, and that will affect when you reach out. I have a client who sells golf operations software to golf courses, and so they can only sell to them during certain times of the year because the rest of the year they're shut down. So during the winter, they're like totally non-operational. But they then recently released a product, an additional component to their software that allows them to reserve not outdoor, but like indoor practice modules. And so now they can come back to them, and timing has changed. The signals have changed. So naturally, the winter is the best part of the year to reach out and say, hey, you guys are using simulators. Now we want to reach out and see if this would be a better fit for you, since we weren't able to come to a conclusion on the golf software. So lots of different signals you can use there.
The most obvious one to me for a signal is if they're searching for something on Google.
Yeah, and a lot of marketers will use that. There's sales teams now that can leverage that because there's platforms like ZoomInfo where they can say, hey, search intent is really high here, or like search volume is really high here. People have been looking for SEO, and so maybe if you're an SEO salesperson, you're going to reach out to them and say, hey, this is probably a priority for you guys at this time of year or whatever. You won't tell them that you have that level of creepy data, but you might reach out and hope that you got good timing.
So ZoomInfo actually has what they're looking for, been searching for?
Yeah, so they'll aggregate data based on IP addresses and locations, and they'll tell you, hey, here's a signal. These guys, somebody here or a lot of somebody's here based on the volume are searching for this particular topic.
Holy crap, that's pretty cool.
It's about 50% of it is suspect, and the rest of it's pretty good. So if you're willing to spend the money for a $50,000 platform, it's got really cool features for sure. So target message channel timing. This is the order of operations. This is the order of value. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I love this formula because it makes it so stinking simple that I don't get confused about what thing I need to be focused on. I get a lot of questions about, Rich and I were talking about this the other day. Hey, what message should I send? Or in what channel should I use? Well, first let's figure out your target. Who are you saying it to, right? So we'll talk about that in a second. Let's break down some examples. First, how marketers solve the equation, because it's not different. We talk about sales and marketing as two sides of the same coin. In reality, it feels rarely like that's the case, but it's actually true with this equation. We can both use it. So if you've ever bought something from an Instagram ad, raise your hand. You ever done that? Okay, this has happened to you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Facebook.
Okay. A Facebook ad, sure.
Yeah.
Any other sort of advertisement, I don't know, you hear a jingle on the radio and you're like, oh, that's clever, I'll look them up on their website. Whatever it is, the formula is at play, and we're going to break this down. So, target. You're in their demographic based on your profile. Let's talk about the Instagram example. An ad on Instagram. You're in their demographic based on your profile and your recent activity and probably other web traffic activity. I don't know what kind of level of creepy knowledge they have about you, but you're within their ideal target. They know that you have a propensity to buy products like theirs based on who you are.
Creepier than you think.
Oh, so far, it's the creepiest thing that exists. Message, they had some offer in language that resonated with you, right? They said something that was like, ooh, yeah, I got to click on that. I got to look at that. Their call to action was really clever, but the ad itself had a wrap around that call to action that was just compelling to you. Channel, it was something you were just scrolling, right? You're open to novel things. You're looking for something interesting, and they popped up in your feed and they did something interesting. So it's a great channel for them to hit you in because you're kind of like open-minded. And a lot of times that's where social media advertising is really successful because you're bored. You're looking for something different. And then ultimately, timing is the least important factor here, but I'll say especially if your price is really low. If it's an impulse buy, right? It doesn't matter when you go to the grocery store, if you see a Snickers bar right by the checkout stand, like you're much more likely to buy it just because it's so cheap. It's $1, and you're at the checkout stand. And why not? I'll just throw it on the checkout. You have something, Rich? Oh, cool. Or it's possible you're in market. So one of the guys here at Granite City had a great new monitor that he was using, a second monitor, and I was totally fascinated by it because I'm in market for a second monitor and one that you can travel with. And he said, yeah, I saw it on an Instagram ad, and he happened to be in market. It was a $500 monitor. It's not the cheapest monitor. It's not the fanciest monitor in the world. It's $500.
Extend your laptop.
Yeah,
monitor.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But he was in market. Yeah.
We're all about to see the middle rounds.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now that we talked about it, it's been recorded. Our phones are listening. No, so he purchased because he was in market. He was actually looking for something, and I'm of a similar vein. I said, "Hey, send me the link. I'm gonna take a look at that thing because I got to see it." And something about the ad was compelling to him, so it totally worked. Now, sales teams do the exact same thing. We typically are benefiting from inbound leads that came from marketing doing the things we just described. So typically, if that's a purchase that's much larger than a $500 monitor, perhaps, or bigger than, I don't know, you bought like a cool new hat online. Let's say it's several $1,000 piece of software, you're typically going to end up talking to a sales team. But let's talk about outbound sales and the occasion that it's actually entirely generated by a sales team. This is one of those tricks that you'll see salespeople use, the cold call from a local area code. I remember when that was acceptable. It seems like that's really lost its cool vibe. I was a part of a company that used that. I hate it now. As somebody who receives calls from 559 and I don't live in that area code, it's instantly like, oh yeah, this is spam. So I'm going to share an example, and this is one when I was testing a new business idea. I didn't even have a new domain for it. I was literally selling from my nofluffselling.com. So I sent an email to a woman named Julie. I said, hey, Julie, I've worked in marketing a long time. I've never run into an agency just for forklift dealerships. I mean, that's freaking specific. What a cool niche. I was exploring your site looking to see if you offer content marketing services. I'm launching a white label podcast service for agencies that want to offer podcasting but don't want to build the team and expertise, right? So a very clear, specific, short. I saw that you have the material handling webcast, great concept. I didn't see any content services. Is podcasting something you all would consider adding to your stack? So I was selling to marketers. I had a very specific ask. It was very personalized. Julie's response is very kind. She said, okay, you win the cold email contest. Nice work. Right? I stood out.
Wow.
Yeah. And then her question was clearly, I hadn't said it clearly enough or short enough that she could capture it. She said, a clarifying question here. Ultimately led to a really good conversation with Julie. This happens all over the place with skilled salespeople. I will say, typically you send out an email, it's much less advanced than that, and it's very boring and basic, and it looks like ad copy, and everybody rejects it, or it doesn't even make it to your inbox. But when it works together, we'll talk about how that works. So
going back to that, one of my friends told me that the subject, if you're doing cold emails, the subject line is very important.
Incredibly important. Yeah.
You know what? You remember what the subject line was in here?
Oh, I'll find it to you. I'll find it and send it to you afterwards.
Or maybe more of a general. What is it? What makes it for a good subject line?
It was probably personal to her, so it's probably material handling webcast ? Or podcast in 2023 ? Or do you offer podcast services? It was something that was relevant because you can't just say something salacious and exciting that gets them to open it because it has to be relevant to the message itself. But typically they're looking on, like, it's very common to look on their mobile phone. So it's the subject line and the first few characters of the actual body copy itself. Mm-hmm. This is why I don't waste any time with, hey, Julie, hope you're having a great pre-holiday preparation. Hope Black Friday wasn't too crazy. Like, don't waste any of that space. I go straight into the message. Okay. But I definitely personalized it to her, or I had something very relevant and like really crisp, not very relevant subject line. But I will say experiment with that because there's no one answer to any of this.
The
Yeah.
point about mobile though is pretty important. I mean, the subject and maybe not even quite half that first sentence becomes this mini abstract. Even if you look on your phone right now in terms of what you can see in your email.
Yeah.
I mean, that's.
Yeah, if you
Like-
open your email app right now, you'll see a bunch of messages and it's not just subject, you'll see the first line,
Sure.
part of the first line.
And there is an argument for actually making that your unique value proposition, right? That those characters that are visible.
Yeah, one of the things I would change if I wrote this email again is I wouldn't talk about me in the first sentence. That was an experiment. That was, I tried it out because I wanted to introduce the idea that I'd never seen this before and it was fascinating. It was novel. But the chance that she reads past, I've worked in marketing a long time, pretty low. I got lucky. Let's be honest.
How would you change that? Would you say, what would you say?
I might cut that.
Podcasting in 2023.
Well, I might cut off the first half of that first line and just say, an agency just for forklift dealerships? I've never seen this before.
That's
What if
exactly what I would do. I would start
So I
the sentence with and.
cut off the me,
Yeah.
focus on them.
I would just flip the sentence around
Yeah.
Totally. Yep.
and go right into I've been and still say exactly what he said. But lead with them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's talk about why that particular interaction works. This is how we solve this equation from a sales perspective. The target was an agency owner that doesn't offer podcasting but had other content services. I knew, hey, you already do marketing, you offer some things to clients. This is not one of those things you offer. So I knew it was within my wheelhouse. And I was talking to the owner. I wasn't talking to an assistant or the head of product or anything like that. I went straight for the owner. My message was, the request that I was making of her was just start a conversation. And I wrapped that in a brief personalized message. So if you remember, the ask was, is podcasting something you all would consider adding to your stack? Right? Is it like, hey, is that something you're thinking about? Is it relevant? Yes or no? Just got the conversation off to a start. The channel I know as an agency owner previously, she uses email all the time. So I knew it was also a very cost-effective test for me. I didn't have to spend a bunch of money to go find email addresses. I had a tool for that. It's very cost-effective. Instead of, let's say, for example, if I wanted to book the most meetings, I only had 10 accounts I could ever go after in the whole world. I'd send them a freaking sword in a golden box or something. Like, I'd do something totally outlandish and amazing. But for this, it was like, I don't even know if I'm going to do this business. It was more of a concept I wanted to test. And so cold email is the easiest thing in the world. Start to see if there are any signals, and there were some good signals from that. And then ultimately timing, because what I was asking, like it didn't really matter if she was in market because I was really good with that message. I spent a lot more focus on the message. And we'll talk about that in a second, why that matters so much. But any questions on how we use the formula to our advantage here?
Formula makes sense to me in terms of qualifying this lead in terms of worth your time. Is that just a totally separate topic that we don't want to get into at this moment?
So that's a great question. If I could be clearer about my target here, it was an agency owner that had, according to the database I had access to, a certain amount of revenue or certain headcount. So if they had 1 to 10 employees on LinkedIn and I could only see 2 people really on LinkedIn, I probably wouldn't reach out to them. If they had 50 employees, pretty interesting. It means they've got enough of a client base. So I can use proxies. I may not be able to figure out exactly what I want to know, like how many clients or how much revenue are they doing, because that typically isn't public information for privately held companies. But absolutely, I should do my best targeting, and that's where I spend the most time. If I could spend, it's like if I had to chop down a tree, 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'd spend 6 hours sharpening my axe or whatever the quote is. Same idea with if you have to do any sort of marketing or sales, whether it's advertising or it's in how I do outbound sales, I'm going to spend most of my time building my target list.
Do you do that with decision maker personas also?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yep. You got to decide if you know enough, and if you don't know enough, then you got to do enough experimenting to find out what you don't know, and then you learn it, and then you retarget, narrow your focus again. So I might go broader. I won't do the same campaign to 3 different personas. I'll do unique campaigns with hypotheses, and I'll see, okay, what signals am I getting? This seems to be resonating most with this third persona. I'm going to now double down on that one and probably ignore the rest until I run out of room in this first persona.
And when you say campaign, are you talking about email? Are you talking about multi-channel? Or are you
Multi-channel, yeah. If I were cold calling today, I still wouldn't cold call 10 VPs of marketing, 10 CEOs, and 10 directors of content marketing. Like I would have called all agency owners one day or for a few days, learned what I could learn. I would have called a bunch of heads of marketing or heads of product, and I would have compared the results. But I wouldn't do it all at once, and that's commonly what happens is we get kind of lazy. Oh, I don't know who exactly it is, so let me shoot out one message to this whole audience, and guess what? That doesn't work. I mean, it's just never going to resonate because you didn't go specific enough with your messaging because you didn't get tight enough with your targeting. So it's better to run multiple campaigns than it is to go really broad and just hope that the law of large numbers wins out. It just requires burning through too much effort, time, money, typically leads. Good questions, guys. Good questions. I want to emphasize this. Not all pieces of the formula are created equal. They're in this order for a reason. In fact, they're slightly out of order in the book, and we learned something after writing the book. Target, message, channel, timing. The target, you can see the icon here for that, matters more than anything else. If you can imagine, if I have a really cleverly crafted message, but it's hitting someone for whom this is irrelevant, I cannot win. There is no hope. If I have a really great message, but I use the wrong channel, well, I can try another channel. I have another opportunity here. It doesn't really matter where I'm getting them. I can leverage that message again. And ultimately, if I have the right target, I've hit a pain with my messaging that they really care about, it doesn't matter if they're in market. They could be part of the 90% who are not buying today, who aren't even open to it. And if I hit on that pain, they feel that I truly understand them, we might get a conversation out of it. Doesn't mean I can get a sale, but it's where the sale starts. It's how I get in front of them so that when they are in market, I'm the first person they call. I'm creating the scope of what they need. I'm telling them, I'm advising them ahead of the purchase itself. So questions about how we plan for the value of each of those components of the equation?
Is there a value? So, ultimately, there's usually a decision maker. Is there a value to go like lower and then try to build up, or get them to be a champion, or?
Lots of different strategies for who you target. It depends on what you're selling. So you can go bottom up as one strategy, and you can go top down. So if I'm selling to, let's say, a head of sales at a startup, I could go to the founder and say, hey, I know a lot of founders are dealing with this. Typically, their VP of sales are trying to solve it with this. We've got an additional thing that can solve it this other way, or more cost effectively, or faster, or better. Is that worth a conversation? They'd say, yeah, but you need to talk to my VP of sales. This is her. I've copied her on this email, right? Or, hey, I'm going to give you her number. You need to call her and tell her I said you could talk. Or come bottom up and say, I don't even know if this is the right kind of company yet, or if I don't know if they're in market, or I don't know if they have the problem I'm trying to solve. Before I go waste time trying to reach a decision maker who's ultimately a lot harder to reach, I might call the sales team and say, hey, do you guys have an integration? I see you guys are using this tool. Does that integrate with your Salesforce? It doesn't. Interesting. I'm like, what problems does that create for you? And then I might craft an email to the VP of sales and say, hey, was talking to some of your sales team members recently to understand if this is a fit for you. It looks like your integration with ZoomInfo is broken with Salesforce. And that's something that we do because we run sales operations for startups like yours all the time. Is it worth the chat? See like how much more efficient
Well,
we
the
can
lower,
make
it sounds like the lower, if you go lower, that's a research. That's
certainly, yeah. You're not typically able to. It depends how low you go, and it depends how much authority they have. So if I were trying to sell to a CEO, I might go to a rung lower and try and build up because they respect what that department division head, what they say. But typically, I'll do bottoms up if I'm trying to research the qualifications of an account.
okay.
Or an individual. Typically an account, though. You can't get a lot of personal information on somebody just by cold calling, or emailing somebody below them. So, yeah, a lot of different ways to approach the target angle. Cool. Any other questions on what we talked about so far? Cool. Any questions online, Rich? Anything that's come up?
Okay, so
Cool. We'll keep chugging along, and then we'll get a chance to workshop. Yeah, this is my meme that represents what we just talked about. A brilliant message can't resonate with the wrong audience. It just can't do it. Okay, so let's pretend we start a company. The 6 of us, we're co-founders. We're going to do this thing. Calling it backitup.io. Okay, I don't know if this is an actual thing. It's got to exist already. Well, let's pretend we're a software company. Rich built some genius software for us. You designed the UI and the UX, and we're just feeling really strong about this. It just allows cars to back into parking stalls. I say this because I want software that will allow me to do it automatically because I don't care about parallel parking. I don't live in New York. I live in freaking Folsom, and I got to back into stalls all the time at my kids' school so I can pull out because of the crazy parents driving around there. I want software that can do that for me. So we built the company, right? Now we got to decide our target. Are we selling to drivers? Because we could go direct to drivers, advertise this online, make it an app. If you have a Tesla, for example, maybe you can upload custom software. So then we get more specific. Okay, maybe just Tesla drivers because they can affect change using their software. Mustang Mach-E's, who knows? Or are we going to sell to manufacturers? I'm a B2B guy, so we're going to assume that we're going to sell to manufacturers. The next question is, how are we going to use our message? Like, what's our message going to be? How are we going to pique interest, or are we going to qualify them? well, I don't know a lot about the vehicle manufacturing industry, so I've got to do a little bit better qualification. So we're going to assume our pitch is really to qualify the title. Are we talking to the right person at these companies? So instead of trying to get them to meet with us, it's, hey, Rich, would you even be the right person to talk to about this? And then they can hopefully forward us to the right person if not. Now we're deciding on channel. We got to figure out where do these people spend time. And the qualifier here, as we talked about a little bit ago, the reason I use cold email a lot or cold calling is because very cost effective. I can have a pretty short runway in terms of my decision whether we're going to be able to raise funds or whether this is going to be successful and scalable and I want to invest more heavily into this particular avenue. I might end up saying, oh yeah, this didn't work. I'm going to go back to selling to individuals and like drivers instead of manufacturers because this test failed. Great. Well, depending on how much budget I have, how much runway I have, that'll affect what channels we use. But I'm going to use cold email, and as a fallback, I'll try and hit them on LinkedIn. Okay, that's our guess here, our hypothesis. Some things I do not know about the car manufacturing industry. I played with this a little bit. I don't know if there's seasonality. I imagine there is, right? There's some peak seasons like around holidays. I don't know if people buy more cars at the end of the year because they can get a better deal or whatever. Reporting periods, do they have typical times where they're sharing public information about the initiatives they have? The 10K report, do they have those? You're mostly publicly traded companies because I'm going after big manufacturers. And what other initiatives can I find out about? They might have gotten some press recently that said, hey, we're going big on autonomous vehicles. So let me share the example. That's what we picked. We said, all right, we're going to go after the 10K report. We're going to hit them with cold email. The ask is going to be just, are you the right person? And we figured out that we're selling to vehicle manufacturers. Is it clear how we built a campaign around this for back it up? Everybody good on that?
Is the timing is essentially you're trying to figure out what the right signal is to
Yeah.
who you reach out to.
Yeah, so I'm gonna, in building my list, I can go and research their 10K reports and find, oh, they talk about autonomous vehicles. They talk about autonomous. These guys don't. That's not a priority for them this next quarter, this next year. But I can use that to determine when it's the right time to reach out. Okay, so this is an example email. Hey, Jim, your CEO just mentioned in the recent 10K that you're making incremental steps toward autonomous vehicles. That's exactly in line with where Back It Up is helping Toyota and Jaguar Land Rover. Let's pretend we had pilots running with them, right? We're doing really well for ourselves. Our code will give your Mach-E, one of my favorite new cars, the Mustang Mach-E, and other code run vehicles, again, a term that I don't know if is real. Code run vehicles could be total nonsense. I'm making it up here. The ability to back into parking stalls, taking you one step closer to full autonomy. Is that in your wheelhouse? Okay, I reach out to Jim, and Jim gives me the reply, yes, it's in my wheelhouse, no, it's not, or he ignores me. I learned something from all three. Okay?
And who would Jim be in this scenario?
Oh, let's pretend Jim is the VP of Innovation at Ford, right? Consumer Vehicles Innovation Vice President, right? And that was my best guess, but I don't know. And I would probably try several different messages to several different targets. I wouldn't try them all at the same time. It's another mistake we make is I take the same message, I slightly tweak it, and I send it to 15 different people. If they're in the same department, there's a little bit of sharing, like, did you get an email from that guy? Okay, yeah, he's an idiot. All right, go ahead and delete that, guys. We're just going to ignore that fool. Like, they might send it on Microsoft Teams or Slack to each other. But that's how it works. We start with the target. We can't start with anything else. If we don't know who we're trying to reach, then every attempt to create a clever message or compelling message is going to fail.
So you really wouldn't like target multiple people in the same company at once? You would target, if you don't hear a response, find somebody else? Is that?
It depends on how many titles you're testing. You can only handle so much thoroughness in developing a message at once. So I'd say, so there was one time when I had a big whiteboard like the one here in this room, and I did draw out grid lines, and we wrote a 64 variant test, but you can't run multivariant tests. You have to have enough of a big market. You have to have enough different variations of the messaging. You have to have enough people you can reach out to, and it has to be cost efficient enough, because remember, we could spend weeks building this campaign only to find out we were totally wrong, and no manufacturer gives a crap about backing up into parking stalls. So we have to be efficient enough. So I might try the Ford Motor Company different divisions, but I probably wouldn't try them, if it was all like the VP of Innovation, the Director of Innovation, the Senior Manager of Innovation, and the Manager of Innovation. I probably wouldn't try all of them at once, because there's enough knowledge sharing between them that it would look in poor form if I.
But in different departments, you'd probably be okay.
Yeah, I would try different messages to different departments and see if they're the right folks. Sure.
All right.
You can certainly run multiple campaigns. And using the modern tools, so HubSpot, Salesforce tools, those sorts of things, you can actually customize them one-off without spending a whole bunch of time doing it. So you can do it kind of at scale a little bit for some really cool early testing. Right? All right. That was it. That's the concept. This is the formula that scales with you. It works everywhere. When you find that, okay, we're really struggling with reply rates on your email, was it because you had a bad message or because you had no idea who you were supposed to be reaching out to? Did you mix your target? So go back to the very beginning of the formula, right? Oh, nobody's picking up their phones. Okay, can you just change the channel? Can you go on email, or is there something that you need to go further up the stream and think, okay, well, who at that company might answer their phone that I can get some knowledge from quickly, and then vary on your test there. Lots of thoughts. Any questions or ideas since I laid all that out for you guys?
Just wanted to like double down on what are your thoughts on sort of like the tooling? So we run A/B tests in Apollo and these other things on HubSpot. But do you have any like thoughts, like your favorite sort of tool set for executing on like the variant and testing work you do?
Because you're testing messaging, right? And that's the core test is, okay, does this subject line get a better open rate? Does this body copy get better click through? And this is for marketing or sales?
This is mostly sales work.
I guess as much as you said Apollo, and that's not marketing. HubSpot was kind of not sure. Apollo is a really good tool if you're technically proficient at setting up testing. They have really cool automations. They have some really advanced features. I particularly, as a sales guy who likes to occasionally pick up the phone and actually call strangers and interrupt their day, I love Close.com. It used to be called Close.io.
Yeah.
Very efficient selling tool. I mean, it's incredible. And now it plugs into a bunch of systems.
Mm-hmm.
Close.com.
Whereas it used to be just standalone with no integration.
You could not integrate with anything.
It was cool,
Yeah.
but it was not as useful, right? And,
Yep.
they've done more integration now across everybody.
It's a game changer. You could use it in conjunction with HubSpot or Salesforce now, and the data flows seamlessly, where before it's very standalone. But it's got, if you're like a really advanced user, it's got hotkeys, so I could make 200 cold calls in 3 hours and not use any automation, because I could end the call, disposition the call by clicking a couple of buttons with my fingers while it's dialing the next number. They got a multi-line dialer, they have email automation, they have sequence drips, all these cool things. And then the way that they manage data in list building is really, really fun. So you can say, hey, of all my data in this database, give me just a list of people who've opened this email at least 6 times in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, you can do so much little granular splitting to say, here's how I want to spend my time reapproaching these folks. So maybe I emailed, I want to try calling them. Well, who's the best people to call? People have already read my email. So I would narrow down the focus. Whereas HubSpot, it's a little messy to build those sorts of granular lists. They don't even have some of that data, and I feel like Close.com is the best for that. So anyway, if you're trying to scale, though, probably start at HubSpot. Like if you have a good feeling like, okay, we've got a small team, we've got to be able to manage this across multiple reps. I typically go to HubSpot because you're going to integrate marketing. It's really good reporting capabilities. And then at scale, Salesforce, but you got to be like really willing to invest in Salesforce and sales operations. And like we do sales operations for startups, and I have a client where it was like a bomb had gone off in the middle of their Salesforce instance, and nothing was clean and everything was messy. So good question. I love talking about tools. I'm a sales tech.
Is email really, it feels like, you mentioned email as being the way to, your first foray into, reaching to a person. Is that still the standard, or is there better tactics?
Well, so email's the easiest. It's the laziest.
Right.
I will tell you, I'd rather pick up a phone and cold call and have 10 conversations because I can have those in a few hours versus having to wait weeks for a sequence to end and test another sequence and see if, that message resonated a little better. And typical cold email reply rate right now, on average, under 1%. Like average performance, if you're just testing some, just suboptimal copy, and typically with poor targeting, under 1% of people are replying. Issues now are even getting to the inbox is getting a lot harder. So it is a very cheap test for people who are either afraid of picking up the phone or who their audience doesn't use the phone heavily.
So is there a format for, like when you cold call somebody, do you have like a sort of format that you use in your mind, or are you ad-libbing it?
I never ad-lib. I'm a huge fan of scripted intros and then real human conversations after the intro. I think if I were trying to introduce myself at a party, I might be like, okay, I introduce myself. Hey, I'm Rex. I run a sales performance agency. Here's what we do. That's a common question. What do you do? So I got to be prepared for that. But then I got to be an active listener and wait to hear what they say, and then I'll respond. I'm not going to script the whole conversation with another human. That's insane. But I'm also not going to come into ad hoc, shooting from the hip, hoping that I say something clever at the beginning. And then I also can't tell if I'm doing a good job. I can't tell where I'm failing. So if I call everybody and say, hey, this is Rex with No Fluff Selling. We help companies X, and I don't even get past there, oh man, I better try a different intro. But if I don't keep a consistent introduction, then I can't tell if I'm failing in the intro or if it's later and they're just like being nice and letting me talk for longer. So I test consistently how I get into a conversation, and then from there, you got to figure out where the conversation goes. You got to be a good actor.
So for you, it sounds like cold calling is your primary method.
I use a lot of cold email.
So cold email.
Yeah, we do a lot of cold LinkedIn as well. Do a lot of training on all three channels. They're really effective for different buyers for different reasons, and depending on how skilled the salespeople are on some of that and how quick they need a return or an answer. Yeah, just it changes which channels I focus on. Mostly, you should pick the channel based on the buyer, not the seller, though. I'm afraid of cold calling, but my audience is real estate agents. Real estate agents have their cell phone numbers published, and they are waiting for buyers to call them. They will pick up the phone. I got to get over my call reluctance because it doesn't matter that I don't like when strangers call me. They're okay with strangers calling them, so I better use the phone. Like, it would be foolish not to. Same thing with email. I'm emailing marketers, but I'm not a great copywriter. Oh, I'm not very comfortable. Get better at copywriting. Like, learn from the best sales rep at your company, or go find another company where they're successful with cold email and work on it.
So would it be good to do all of the above? Like, I don't know if so one week you do cold emails, another week you do LinkedIn, another week you do cold call.
Yeah, and the way to do that is typically by putting all of those steps into a sequence of activities. So HubSpot, Close.com, you can say, hey, I want to send an email this day. 3 days later, I'm going to call them a couple of times. I'm going to leave a voicemail that time. And you can leave yourself that set of instructions. And then I'm going to connect with them on LinkedIn. So I'll typically do multi-channel communication in every sequence, because just testing one thing again, it depends if you're trying to get a quick answer and figure out, is this an area we want to spend a lot of time in? And then I might dive deeper into one channel where I think, okay, they spend a lot of time in this channel. These are people who answer the phone. These are people who spend a lot of time on email. I would rather focus on that than trying to spread myself too thin. But at scale, people who answer the phone as a habit, answer the phone as a habit. People who don't. So like, I'm probably still going to email. I'm probably still going to use social.
Right.
Do you talk about cadence that way?
Like, how frequently to contact people or reach out to people?
No, so as part of a sales motion, you come up with a cadence where I call, then I email, then I'm going to send a text message, then I'll wait a couple of days, call again, depending on, I mean, if you talked about setting it up with, let's say a team where you have lead generation coming into dozens of reps, where you'll run a cadence and then you put that prospect on ice for a little bit, and then it gets actually handed off to somebody else who will start another cadence, so they're not hearing from the same person. Whereas you might have your own cadence.
Yeah.
Because you're B2B, higher level selling, looking for certain decision makers. But yeah, you send out an email, you call, maybe you have something, this is where I send them that 12-second video as an embed, whichever it is. But you really draw that timeline out.
So, and the question is, how do I think about cadence?
I don't know if it's a question necessarily, but if it sounded to me like what you were touching on bordered on mapping cadence to as part of your process.
Yeah, and the thing that I want to emphasize for startups, if you're a founder and you're selling, fantastic, figure it out for yourself. If you're a sales rep, your boss should tell you what to do. Like, this is not a thing that most sales reps can figure out. So, nor should they be responsible for figuring out, because it should be, we have a consistent learning that we've gained over time doing this for a while. So trust us, but let's experiment, right? But that should be led by management, not by the typical sales rep, because that's just too much burden on them. They're not going to have the advantage of learning from the entire group of reps. So I'm cautious about, and certainly I don't recommend any particular cadence. I know there's a lot of, like, say, pundits out there that say, oh, you got to do the triple tap, where you hit them with a cold call, leave a voicemail, send them an email, and then shoot them a text or some nonsense like, look, if you've tested it and it works, fantastic, do it more. If you tested it doesn't work, don't do it anymore.
Oh, no, and I think you're right. It's something to custom to your audiences and what you're selling.
Yeah.
So sure, quick question
Yeah.
for you. Actually, I'm real interested when you were talking about LinkedIn. I was just wanting to get a little more from you all.
Yeah.
Not only your experience with it, but kind of what sort of responses you get from people on that platform. Because I've been on LinkedIn for a long time. And,
Yeah.
only thing I've ever gotten out of it was headhunters calling me.
Yeah.
So I'm just like wondering I mean, said you focused on that.
Yeah.
You know, this is kind of your thing. So I'm just trying to extract from you, like, what is it about LinkedIn, or can you give me some idea of what kind of response rate you get, how fast the thing turns around? I mean, are the people you're looking at, are they focused on LinkedIn? Are they going there once a week? I mean,
Yeah, good question. So I use LinkedIn personally because I like LinkedIn. It's where I found a lot of value over time. My co-author, we met through LinkedIn. We were both posting articles we'd written back when you had to request to get permission to write articles on LinkedIn. It was like, I'm like a young old man now saying that, but now you have to, you just post whatever you feel like. It's like having a freaking Twitter account. Like anything is fine and everything is fair game. But I use LinkedIn heavily then, and as a sales professional, I'm one of the most common people on LinkedIn. The sales professionals are there and marketers are there. If you're selling to IT, do they have profiles? Yes. Do they spend a lot of time there? Probably not. If you're selling to finance, similar. If you're selling to dentist, maybe they have a profile because they got auto-generated one time. They put in their work email, or they got tricked into it because someone added it. But typically, if you're doing outbound using LinkedIn, I was just talking about this with a networking group recently. There's 3 different approaches. One is you create content and you drive inbound traffic to you, right? So what I do is I talk about sales. I talk about my learnings. I talk about recommendations. I talk about things from my book, whatever. And people come to me and say, hey, Rex, I'm trying to build a team that does this. Is that something you work on? Or do you have any recommendations? So I'll get business that comes to me. And then there's 2 ways to do it outbound. One is it's the slow burn. You connect with them. You actually connect like a human. You post content. You comment on their content. You engage with them. And eventually you take it offline because the goal is to have a real human conversation. That doesn't really happen on social media. So, hey, we'd love to network with you, get to understand what you guys are working on and show you a little bit of what I'm working on. See if we have any, like, I don't know, areas of interest, mutual areas of interest. And then you connect, and you don't expect to get a sale. You might get a referral. You might get some insight. They might know more than you about your industry, whatever. And that can ultimately lead to some sales, but it requires quite a number of those networking conversations. But then cold messaging, which is the thing that's probably most interesting if you're trying to hit people on LinkedIn, I recommend using InMail, not pretending to connect with them just for the benefit of connecting and then immediately pitching them a product. I recommend if you're trying to sell them, tell them you're selling to them. It's okay. It's like a cold email. They know it. They see it coming. If your title is founder or sales, they see this coming. So it would be a very, very brief pitch. The biggest problem I see with cold LinkedIn InMail is that it's very long. So they'll add, 6 paragraphs about what they do. And then, is that interesting? No, I was bored in paragraph 1. I just scrolled to the bottom to get to your question. So it's very brief. So for example, I work with an agency that does podcasting. Hey, saw that you have a current show, but you haven't published in a couple of months. Is that coming back in 2023? Would be happy to talk about how we could partner together on that, right? Like really short, really crisp, very personal, and you get a higher likelihood to respond. Is that answering your question? There's a bunch of different ways.
No.
Okay, then hit me again.
I guess I'm trying to figure out, I know the platform, I'm just trying to figure out, saying that's kind of your sole.
Social media platform. Yeah.
So I'm just kind of, I'm just trying to explore that a little further in terms of response rates and just, I guess, kind of how to use that platform to do anything other than getting headhunters to call.
Oh yeah, I post content. I think the number one thing you can do on LinkedIn is share what you're building, share what you're learning, share who you're working with, share stories, successes, failures, learnings. There's a ton of value to sharing on LinkedIn because people are looking for entertainment there. They're also looking for a little bit of like common humanity, but around a business component,
Well, for LinkedIn, I always think that's like your living resume. So
I don't use it as a resume because
not so much like I'm not looking
that's
for,
how you get headhunters though.
but no, not so much for looking at a job, but like, well, typically if I'm going to engage somebody, the first thing I do is I look them up on LinkedIn.
Sure.
Just to see what they're about.
Yeah.
Or, if you're hired, but then when I looked at it, just, it just builds it, you can tell a person's, I don't know if you can tell a person's, but, when I look at
your credibility,
online. Right. So if this person writes in a lot of articles on sales, like, oh, this guy's a sales expert. So when I was, actively selling apps, I wrote a lot, posted a lot of my blogs on there. And so people could go, oh yeah, this guy knows his shit about, app development. So that's what I kind of do is build my credibility for my industry is what I
It
kind
does
of look at.
depend who you're selling to though, like who you want to work with. So I like working with startups, and startups are looking for free traction, and LinkedIn is a place where you can get a lot of free organic traffic and interest if you post enough about interesting enough stuff. And so it's an interesting channel for me. If I were selling to consumers and trying to build a lifestyle brand, I would be on Instagram, or I'd be on TikTok right now. It'd be really, really hot because TikTok gets a lot of organic traffic. You kind of have to stay on what's new, but you also have to know your audience and are they spending time there. Again,
Where do you just want to get out?
yeah, I am curious. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. The problem is I just did a pivot, so my LinkedIn doesn't, it's almost like I have those like a second LinkedIn thing.
Sure.
So I've had people that kind of went and looked at my LinkedIn thing and then didn't really read what my cover level was saying about stuff, and I'm just like, it's kind of.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say LinkedIn is really good for, it delivers on credibility, but you have to go through and curate, like, we actually have like a doc when we bring on new people in open grants, and we go through and like do their LinkedIn profile for them.
Oh, so.
Yeah.
And so that when people land on open grants, they look up who's reaching out.
Let's help you out.
They get this person who's like, oh, we do
Yeah, sure.
public grant funding, and it does. It's for exactly that reason. People research you. They go to LinkedIn first, and you're like, oh, this person's legit. So
It's like the person's work website.
Yeah.
So yeah, for sure. I think depending on how you position it though, you could share like, hey, I am pivoting and what my history has been is this, and here's why I'm interested in this new thing. And so when they go there, it's not gonna lack resonance. They're just gonna understand why it's not up to date yet. I would definitely say update it though. If that's what if you're going all in,
You
like
know, I'm in the process of changing it.
Yeah.
You still doing the fish filter thing? No?
see,
That's the problem.
there you go. You looked at his LinkedIn and it probably said fish filter.
Fish filter thing.
Cool. Any other, you guys starting a company or working in a company where you got more questions or thoughts on?
So I'm working with another startup, and we're really trying to, so the founders actually developed a patented sports drink, and it's also had a clinical study.
Yeah.
But we sort of realized it's just too hard to sell sports drink, but it's really more looking for a licensing or an acquisition play.
Yeah.
And so my initial strategy was, okay, I could have access to Zoom info. We identify who the different target, sports drink companies are, and then and then we try to figure out the hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just say, hey, and I'm not exactly sure how to do this, but basically somehow I want to get in front of them and say, we have a patented drink that's been clinically validated, and we'd like to partner with you or something.
Yeah.
But my initial thought is I don't even know who to even ask that for.
Yeah, and the key is, as you were describing that, you talked more about the message than you did about the target.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of questions around who's the target for this. Spend 10 times more time on target, right? Who in your network knows somebody at a drink company that you could find out actual information instead of guesswork? Can you do a lot more of the legwork up front? Why these particular drink companies, instead of saying, hey, everybody who sells energy drinks, well, what are the ones that are most likely to have this resonate with them so that I can spend the most time crafting the most relevant message, and then I can experiment with all kinds of different channels, and then time may be darned, it's a new product, so they may be in market, or can I find some reason that they might be open to new product lines?
that's why I use Apollo.
Yeah.
What's a policy?
Similar, so it's like Zoom Info plus HubSpot, like it's a cadence tool plus data.
Tons of like enriched data. So if you want to you can use it to crawl LinkedIn, which turns into something really powerful there.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking for this kind of persona, you can build the persona. It'll spit out a big old list. You can kind of track through those profiles, and it goes really deep. You get people's
It's pretty deep social discovery.
all that stuff. And it's super cheap, like $200 a month.
But if you really want some
Great.
help, let me know. I invested in a beverage company. They're incredibly competitive.
Yeah, that's a tough
They
one.
went out of business, but the guy that was leading it, I'm sure he'd be able to talk to you about it.
Was that the one local here? There's a couple that were local that got lots of money and went out of business.
I don't know if they're local, but I don't know if they got lots of money, but they were talking with these guys, so at one point, but they didn't hit the threshold that those guys wanted, so.
Yeah, and that's my thing is spend a little bit of that effort up front on the target, not on the message, not on how you build the campaign, but literally what can I learn about who to go after? Like, hey, if somebody knows what the thresholds are for selling to Coca-Cola, well, I know what the thresholds are and say, okay, I'm not even going to try and reach out to them because I'd waste a bunch of effort and cycles just like, oh, is my message right? Is my message wrong? No, they're not even close to relevant for those folks. So how do you figure that out early on?
But having said that, these guys are looking for new products.
Yeah, and there's certainly people who are responsible for finding new product.
Exactly.
You want to identify what's the title of that person.
What the hell's that?
Some sort of
Sure.
emergency ping. Yeah, so I would say focus first on target, focus most on target.
Okay.
Then the message is a natural, like, okay, well, I know this about them, so I need to highlight that thing and how it's relevant to my product and what's the ask. Is, well, are you the right person, or is it, when do you have time to, when do you typically look at new products? When do you evaluate those?
Okay.
Otherwise, you could go for influencer marketing, and you just go get some new college athletes are now allowed to get paid for their likeness.
Yeah, that's
So,
the other thing we're doing it
go
on the
get them
consumer
sponsors
side.
and that stuff.
Yeah, we're doing that on the consumer side.
Yeah. So, guys, I love to talk about this stuff. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Let's chat. I'm always happy to spitball.
I'm actually
Tools, technology. I love that stuff.
I'm actually thinking we could even, I mean, sitting here, I was like, we could have done a whole thing on cold calling. We could have done something on email,
Yeah.
cold emails.
Taught many classes on all of those things. I love those subjects. So,
All right.
yeah, throw us, if you're watching, if you're listening still, or if you're watching the recording, shoot Rich an email or a LinkedIn message and tell him what you want to hear about next, and we'll bring in some fellow folks who are practitioners.
All right. So I guess, is that all you have, Rex?
That's what we got.
All right. So there's been no questions online. I'm just going to go ahead and our next event is on January 4th. It's called Founders Anonymous. Again, that's if you are a founder or a business person and you have some problems, just come in, and it's a support group for founders and for founders. And then we have the next day we have Beers and Geeks. Just classic. Come here, have a beer, and talk to fellow startup people. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for coming today. And as soon as I can, I'll post this on our website. So you guys, everyone have a great day. Bye.